Yo guys, it's Griff here back from another video, and today we are doing National League predictions. So I'm going to start with the relegation battle. I think Aldershot time in the National League is going to run out this year. I feel they've not got a strong side and they'll go down this year. I feel like they'll give it a good go, but I think finishing bottom this year is realistic for them. If I'm going to be honest, I don't feel they've got enough squad depth and enough of a good side because they've been struggling in the National League for quite a while now. So that's what I think about Aldershot, to be honest. Next up is newly promoted Oxford City. Yes, they did well last year, but I don't think they'll be able to carry it out throughout this year, as I feel like their team isn't strong enough to be able to compete in the National League, especially with the quality of some of the sides that is in the National League this year, as I think it's a highly contested league this year, and I feel like they'll struggle and they'll go down, if I'm going to be honest. Next up is Gateshead. Gateshead, I always feel like they've been flirting with relegation. Last year they did surprise me a bit by staying up. As Gateshead has struggled over the years, I feel like their time in the National League is over. I know it's only been 1 year, but last year I thought they were quite poor, and at occasions they were lucky to stay up. So, sorry Gateshead fans, but I think it's back down to the league under. Next up is Ebbsfleet United. I feel like they'll be the closest to staying up, but I think they'll just miss out. I'm sorry, I just feel like they haven't got enough coming up from the league under. I feel like it's never going to be easy for you, and you have to hit the ground running, and I feel like they may lose a few quality players to the better sides, and I feel this will cost them. I'm sorry if, I think they've got a chance, and I wouldn't be surprised if they surprise me, but I just don't feel like they've got enough in the tank to be able to stay up to compare with some of the other sides more experienced in the National League than them. Up next is AFC File. I think they will just stay up after coming up from the National League South, I think it was, or North maybe, they came up from. I feel like they've got enough. They've been in the Championship before, so they know how it works, and I feel like they've got enough to be able to stay in the National League this season. It'll be close, but I think they've got enough to be able to stay up for some quality players they've got last year, so hopefully they carry out their performances from last year into this year. Next up is York City. I feel like York City are a quality side, and they've got enough to be able to stay up, and I think they'll stay up comfortably, to be honest. I think they're a decent side. They've got a few quality players. It's not an easy place to visit, the York City Stadium, and I think honestly they're a decent side, and they'll be pretty pleased, I reckon, with this kind of finishes, as it's not easy to stay up in the National League, and maybe they can build on this for the next season after that, and maybe shock a few and maybe finish near the playoffs if they have a really good season. You never know. Next up is Kidderminster Harriers. I've always said Kidderminster always had a strong side, so I feel like I'm not surprised that they'll stay up because they've got quality players, and they've always been knocking on the door of the National League, and they were in it quite a few years ago, and I feel like they're a decent side, and they've clearly got enough in this town to be able to stay up. They've got quality managers, some great players, and they'll stay up, I think. I'm pretty comfortably, I'd say. Next up to the mid-table category, I am going for Dorking Wanderers. Dorking are a decent side, and I think they've got enough to stay up. I love the manager, Mark Wright. They've got really good quality players. I love the TikToks they do. Honestly, I rate them really highly, and I think Dorking are a decent side, and they'll have enough to be able to stay up this season and finish mid-table. As they do concede a lot, but they do score a lot, so they'll be good this season, I reckon. Next up is Eastleigh. Eastleigh are a decent side. Yeah, they could be going for the playoffs, but I don't know. I don't think they will be in the playoffs this season, as I feel like they might struggle a little bit, but they are a decent side, so they'll be mid-table and they'll be comfortable mid-table, but they might shock me and go into the playoffs. I don't know yet, so I'll just keep my predictions open, as they did alright last season, and they did better than most people expected, but I still don't feel like the playoffs are for them, sorry. Next up is Dagenham and Redbridge. Yes, this is a low finish for Dagenham, but I feel like they're going to have a tough year this year. I'm sorry, Dagenham fans. I think you're a decent side. I think you've got some quality players, But for me, I don't know. I feel like you might struggle a bit this year. I had to put a few teams to underperform, and Dagenham are one of them. Sorry, as they could surprise me and they could be in the playoffs, but it wouldn't surprise me at the same time if you think about it, because they are a really good side and they have been knocking on the door of the playoffs, and they'll either be there. They'll be thereabouts, I reckon. Not on there, but they'll be close, really close, I reckon. Next up is Maidenhead. Obviously, I really like Maidenhead. They've got King Jr. there, the goalkeeper, and they've got some Nathaniel George there. They've got some quality players there. And Maidenhead have a good side, but I just don't feel like their team is good enough to be able to go for the playoffs. But they've got some quality players, and I think that will easily carry them out. But relegation could be always there if they don't perform well. And it's not easy going to Maidenhead Stadium last season, but hopefully it's the same this season so Maidenhead have a good chance of staying up and doing okay. Next up is Wealdstone. I'm not a big fan of Wealdstone, as they've got some poor fans, but Wealdstone, I reckon they'll stay up. Yeah, they were near the playoffs again last season, but this season, I'm sorry, I'm just saying a mid-table finish. I think it'll be a decent year, but I don't feel like they're good enough to be able to stay up, as they struggle sometimes. And I feel like this is going to be a year where they'll struggle, to be honest. And for them, this will be a bad finish to compare with last time. But as I'm saying, I think they'll finish here, if I'm going to be honest, in 13th. Next up is Altrincham in 12th. I feel like Altrincham are a decent side. They've got some quality players, but I feel like sometimes they'll lack the finishing touch they've got there. I feel like Altrincham, they're a decent side, honestly they are, but for me, I don't think they're getting the playoffs this year. I think they'll just suffer a bit and they'll fall short again. I feel like they've got quality players, decent home ground, but it's not for me. I'm sorry, Altrincham fans. Next up is Bromley. Bromley have got some quality players. They've won a few cups in the last few years, and honestly, I've rated them. They've got a good side, but this year, no, I'm sorry, no playoffs. They did really well last year to get into the playoffs and nearly got to the finals, but I just don't feel like this year will be their year. I think they'll be close. But it wouldn't shock me if they were in the playoffs, but for me, no, I'm sorry. I don't think they'll be getting the playoffs this year, as their team sometimes lacks that finishing touch, and I feel like they'll lack that this year. Next up is Barnet. Barnet, again, they were in the playoff last year, but I feel like the quality this year is going to make them fall short, as they will fall short for me this year. They've got some quality players, but for me, they just won't be good enough this year. They've got really good manager, they've got a few quality players, but for me, it's not going to be for them this year. I feel like they'll struggle a bit, and this will be a poor finish for Barnet standards, as they did so well last year. Next up is Solihull Moors. Solihull Moors are a really good side, and I feel like they have got some quality players, but I just feel like they've not got enough to go up. I feel like quite a small club, not the biggest following, and I feel like they won't be able to do as well as they did in the past few seasons. But this year, no, I'm sorry that you're not getting the playoffs. You're close, but not close enough. If you're wondering why I'm sniffing a bit, I've got a bit of a cold, but it doesn't matter really, to be honest. So if I don't sound 100%, that is why. So next up is Rochdale, just missing out on the playoffs. I think they'll be close. I know they've had problems in the last few years, but I don't think they can get the playoffs this year. Just settle in, take that 8th position, and then build on it next year. Get a bit of National League National League experience. There we go, that's the word. Experience, and then build on that for this year, and then get better and better, and hopefully get into the playoffs next year, because I do like Rochdale. Next up is Southend. Southend are a decent side, to be fair. I really like Southend. I feel bad for them with some of the problems they've had over the years, but I feel like they will get the playoffs this year. I think it's their year. I think if they can sort the problems off the pitch, then on the pitch they'll perform properly, and they've got some quality players, as I feel like they've got enough to be able to do well and get into the playoffs this year. Next up, coming down from the league above, is Hartlepool. I feel bad for them coming down, but I think they'll have a good chance of going up, to be honest. They're a decent side and they've got a few quality players, and it's not easy to visit Hartlepool, as it's quite far away from many other teams, and I think Hartlepool will have enough to be able to secure that playoff position. Next up is Woking. Woking are a decent side, to be fair. They've got a really good players. They've got playoff experience last year. They underperformed in the playoffs, if I'm going to be honest, going out in the first round. and I feel like they'll be close to going up, but I'm not sure if they'll go up this year. But I think they will get the playoffs, so they'll be pretty pleased with that, if I'm going to be honest. And maybe they can get promoted this year. I'm just not too sure yet. And just missing out on the top three is Oldham Athletic. Oldham are a quality side. You know they've got a great fan base. You know they've got some really good quality players. You know they've got the money to go up. But I don't know. I don't feel like they'll get that top three position because the teams above them just have more National League before experience, and they've just got very much better sides, I think. But Oldham are a great side. Respect to them, honestly. But I just don't feel like they're as good as the few teams above. So in third position, I'm going for Halifax Town. They're a great side, amazing following. They've got a really good squad there. They've got player for experience, and I feel like as Halifax played Wrexham last year, I respect them. They're a really good side, so I feel like Halifax will get that third position. Second place, just missing out on the title, is Boreham Wood. Boreham Wood are always a quality side with Luke Garrard as the manager. He's a brilliant manager, and I feel like he's got enough to be able to secure that top three position. And even if they don't, I feel like they still have a really good chance of getting promoted because they've got a really good squad and they're always up in the mix of the playoffs. And in first position, I am going for Chesterfield. Chesterfield, yes, they missed out on it last year brutally to Notts County on penalties. But I feel like this is their year. Chesterfield have some really quality players. And I feel like they've got enough to go for the title. And they will get the title as they've got some really good signing. Paul Cook as manager is a brilliant manager. And I think they've got enough to finish first and win the title. So that's it for the video today. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It's been Griff and I'm out. I'll see you next time.